Today in Memo to the President, the topic is Lead with Confidence. Hi, I'm Gigi Hinton, along with Senior Fellow Darrell West, Director of Governance Studies here at Brookings and author of Lead with Confidence. Hello, Darrell. The title of your memo to the President is Lead with Confidence, and that's sort of like evocative of two things, that the President needs confidence in himself and the electorate, and the global community will then follow with the same sort of confidence in his abilities. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, he needs to be a strong leader because we're facing such difficult economic circumstances, the financial meltdown, people's anxieties about the future, that he needs to be a leader, but he also needs to come across as confident in that, because an audience is not going to believe him unless he believes in himself. And he is a great orator, so that should be an easy task for him.
Okay. So you set up the memo with the situation. What is the situation that President-elect Obama finds himself in now as we transition to the White House?
The good news for Obama is he's a Democratic president with substantial majorities in the House and Senate. So, you couldn't ask for a better political situation than that. But he has to keep in mind, in 1993 and 94, Bill Clinton was in exactly the same situation and was not able to get a democratically controlled Congress to pass a single vote on his health care reform, which was the centerpiece of his domestic agenda. So Obama has to be careful not to become complacent, that because he's in such a strong political position that he's going to be able to get things done. We have a fragmented government. There are a lot of veto points. There are lots of ways in which institutions operate very slowly. There are going to be interest groups that don't like what he's doing, and so it's still going to be hard to get things done, even though he's in a strong position.
And even in his strong position, clearly there's really no honeymoon period. And you write of something called a teachable moment. What is that?
Obama used to be a college professor at the University of Chicago, and so he needs to understand that part of his role is teaching the country about the need for a new leadership style. The fact that he made a lot of promises during the campaign, but the economic circumstances have changed. It's going to take longer to address education and health care and all the other things that he wants to do. So he needs to envision himself not just as a politician, but as an educator who helps inform the electorate about where we are now, where he's going, and what we need to overcome in order to be successful.
Okay, then you have a section in the paper called Your Stance, and I think the cornerstone of that is bipartisanship. He spoke about it on the campaign trail, and you're saying it's critical to his success as a president. Is that right?
Yes. We know that over the last 10 to 20 years, there's been extreme polarization in Washington, D.C. It's been very hard for Republicans and Democrats to work together. There's been a lot of institutional gridlock on a wide variety of issues: immigration, climate change, health care. I mean, virtually every issue, it's been hard to get Congress and the presidency to work together. So what Obama needs to do is to take advantage of this short period when he's in the afterglow of the election and people are feeling good about change and a new person coming in, to basically maintain that bipartisan stance. He needs to identify several issues where he can work with Republicans. Stem cell research would be an example of that. Alternative energy source development, both Republicans and Democrats can support that.
So he has a lot of work ahead of him.
He does.
Yes, he does. We'll see you again here next week for Memos to the President. Thanks.
What does the President-elect have to do now?
He needs to focus on getting a good chief of staff. I mean, that's going to be his emissary, person who's going to be representing him, set the tone, the discipline, the leadership.
I mean, there are a lot of things that I think need to change, foreign policy especially. I think we need to work together with our allies and not act in such unilateral fashion.
I think Barack Obama should focus on the financial crisis, because that's at the forefront of the Americans' minds right now, and also being a dual citizen. I'm a Canadian as well. We recently had an election in Canada, so I think that he also needs to meet with our Prime Minister in order to strengthen relations between the two countries so we can work together on foreign policy issues.
Hello, I'm Ron Nesson with Brookings Senior Fellow Steve Hess, author of What Do We Do Now? A Handbook for the President-elect. Steve's book is a primer for the new president to help him get his White House and his administration up and running. Steve, you write in your book that President-elect Obama will have 3,000 government positions to fill. That seems like a lot. Does it take weeks or months or what?
Well, first of all, 3,000 out of 2 million makes it sound a lot smaller. President-elect, a candidate, thinks, wow, well, I'm really going to take over government. But in fact, he takes over just the cream at the top of government and then has to get on with the rest of the permanent bureaucracy. Now, of the key jobs, of course, it's his cabinet and it's his White House staff. But you better start with your White House staff first, or at least the major positions, because you need them in order to pick your cabinet. Bill Clinton made a big mistake in 1992 when he was putting together his government, because he spent so much time on his cabinet, because he wanted it to look like America, so it was almost like a jigsaw puzzle, that he didn't appoint his White House staff, except for his chief of staff, until 6 days before his inauguration. That doesn't give him much learning time.
Well, some of these jobs, well, the cabinet particularly, require Senate confirmation, and that slows the process down even more?
Yeah. The White House staff, by and large, he can do whatever he wants. It doesn't take Senate confirmation. All of the others, the cabinet ones, you have to go to the Senate, which means, of course, that you've got to go through a great vetting process, FBI, Internal Revenue, so forth and so on, and then the Senate staffs itself. You have to have hearings. Increasingly, the senators want to know not just are you an honorable man or woman, but do you agree with me? What's your position on the environment, and so forth. So it's become a more and more complicated position, and sometimes it doesn't even get. They don't even get through with the cabinet till March.
Well, you say there are 6 key positions in the White House that ought to be filled before the inauguration. And that's Chief of Staff, Personnel Director, Counsel, Press Secretary, Congressional Relations Chief, and Speechwriters.
Right.
And they should be filled right away?
Right. The Chief of Staff particularly, you would assume that every person about to be president has in mind exactly who he wants. So that's a done deal. If that's not true, then there's some real problems. But the others don't necessarily follow, although some come out of the campaign. It's very logical. In the campaign, you have a speechwriter, you have a press secretary. They're doing a good job. You won, and so you bring them into the White House.
Well, you say concerning the Chief of Staff that the new president ought to ask him, are you capable of firing my closest friend, and will you support enthusiastically a policy of mine that you hate?
Yeah. I'm saying, in effect, the Chief of Staff has to be a really tough guy. Bill Clinton made a mistake out of goodness. He chose his best friend. He chose somebody he was in kindergarten with, Mac McClarty, who was a wonderful guy, but he wasn't going to crack the whip over the staff. In fact, they called him Mac the Nice. And ultimately, he did very good things for President Clinton, but he didn't last that long as Chief of Staff.
Thank you, Steve. I'm afraid we're out of time for today, but we'll be back next week with more advice for what the new president should do as he prepares to move into the Oval Office. See you then.
Be a part of the presidential transition. Join our pundits and experts for The Scouting Report, our live web chat every Wednesday afternoon at 12:30. Log on to www.brookings.edu/transition.